Hello, everyone. This is Maya Zahira with psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And I want to welcome you to this. Well, all of our classes are important, but this one I feel is very important because there's not enough information out there about this subject. Today, we're going to be talking about illness caused by spiritual warfare. Now, this can happen to anyone. So, even if you are perfectly healthy right now, well, we hope that you remain perfectly healthy, but this information is going to be important for everyone, no matter your health status, because anyone can be impacted by these issues. Whether it's you, whether it's a loved one or a friend or anybody in your world, right? So this is really important to understand. And I'm going to be sharing lots of layers of information today. I think you'll be learning at least a few, if not many, new things. So we already have a lot of people here live, and I'm so excited about that. I've especially been getting the word out to people I know who are struggling with their health and spiritual warfare. So this is not a health video about like how to improve your diet or whatever. This is about the spiritual aspects of illness. So, for those of you who are already here, go ahead and let us know where you're joining from. I always take the first few minutes to do shout outs and to give some announcements. And that way, it also allows a little more time for more people to come on in to the live. So, this is just a little friendly reminder. Also, those of you who are watching the replay, we're so glad that you're here. And this is a friendly reminder that this is a YouTube live. And in YouTube lives, there is a fair amount of chit chat and interaction, and it's different than a concise video. So if you're wanting something more concise without the interacting part of it, then there's lots of shorter videos between 5 to even 30 minutes where I'm just teaching and not live. So just letting you know about that, because sometimes people are like, stop the chit chat. Well, don't watch a YouTube live then, because that's what we do on YouTube live. So let's look at comments. Hello, Melinda. Hello, Evelyn. Good to see you. And we have a lot of people here, so don't be shy. Go ahead and share in the comments. Just say hi. I would love to know where you're joining from. Also, just I'm recognizing that it's taken me several months of learning curve to get used to YouTube Live. And one of the things that's been the most challenging for me is usually at the beginning. If there are any trolls, they show up near the beginning, and then it's a little bit distracting for me because I get on here without an admin. I'm my own admin. So I'm very aware of that now. And so whenever, actually, let's work together as a team. If you see any comments that are clearly inappropriate, you can actually report it, and then that person will be removed. So that helps me, or I will just remove it. So any trolls who are watching, we're going to just remove you as soon as you make that first comment. So it's not going to be fun here. So you may as well leave. Okay. We have Coral Cross Music says, hi, I'm in the east of England. I've just finished listening to the audio of your Psychic Protection Sourcebook, and it was very insightful. I'm really glad that you read or listened to that book. There's a lot of information in that book. Some of my other books are quick reads. You can get through them really fast, even though there's really useful information. That one, a lot of people have told me they have to read a section at a time, and make notes in the margins of it. You listened, so you could listen again, listen multiple times. I think you'll get different layers from it. And let's check the time here. Okay, just real quick before we get into our content, if you are new or not so new to my material, I've dedicated my life full time for the last decade to helping people with spiritual warfare issues. And prior to that, for the 20 years, 2 decades before that, I was also a spiritual teacher, but not focused solely on spiritual warfare like I have been in the last decade. So if you would like some more information on how to connect with the books that we were just talking about, or there's 2 online course options, you can go to my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And that's where you can that's where you can work with me. That's where you can get more information, get resources. And on purpose, because like many of you, I've had times in my life where I didn't have $2 to rub together. So on purpose, I've created different tiers where there's free content, there's low cost content, and then there's more premier type of content, or resources, I should say, so you can choose what will fit for you. So there is truly something for everyone. And there's a compliment about my glasses. Thank you very much. I think they look kind of tie-dye. They're actually supposed to be like the Cosmos. That's what it said when I ordered them, but I think they look tie-dye. So either one is fine. And I'm going to try to do a better job of taking a moment to pre-read before I start reading out loud, because sometimes I'll start reading and I'll be like, that comment is totally off topic of whatever right now we're just chatting, but when we get into the topic. So just a heads up, as I'm continuing to get used to doing YouTube lives, if anyone posts or asks questions as we move into the class that are about some other random spiritual topic that's not about illness caused by spiritual warfare, I'll just skip over that question and I'll just focus on, because a couple of classes ago we just went way off into left field, and so we're not going to do that this time. We're going to stay on topic. And right now we're just chit-chatting and saying hi to each other. We have someone who says, actually, I'm an addict. I've been clean for a year, but I'm stuck. What's really going on? I can't figure it out. And Lily is here from New Zealand. I almost said New England. I don't know why. Awesome. Welcome. And I love all the hearts coming through. Okay, so I want to ask you all a question. And the question is, and some of you have already shared this, are you someone who is dealing with any level of illness? And it can include addiction, like one of our viewers just mentioned. It can be physical illness, mental illness, chronic type of illness, or life-threatening illness. Like, is there any part of that that you relate to? And do you suspect that there might be a spiritual influence on that? And I word that very carefully, because sometimes it is a genuine illness, like maybe it genetically runs through our family, or we were exposed to something, and so it is a physiological illness that's happening. But there's also a spiritual element tied in. And yet other times it's 100% caused by negative spiritual interference. So sometimes it can be either one, right? I'm just laughing at the comments. Okay, so I do, and as always, I have a page and a half of notes. I am going to be looking at my notes because I won't remember all of the points if I don't do that. So thank you for your patience with that. And as I look at my notes, I remember that I need to give a disclaimer that I am not a doctor and none of what I'm sharing here is medical advice. And I know that's common sense, but sometimes people forget about that. Also, it's important to understand that even if there is a spiritual element in your health challenge that you're having, even if there is a spiritual element, it is still important to seek medical care, because at this point, once it has manifested into physical manifestation, then you probably do need physical support. So I truly believe that it's important to do, if there's a spiritual element, focus on the spiritual aspect, spiritual cleansing, all of that, but also seek medical care, because usually both aspects are needed. And whatever form of medical care is totally up to you, whether it's allopathic, natural, or a combination of both. So just remember, this is not medical advice, and follow your doctor's advice. Also, this is also common sense. You know, if you go to your doctor and you talk to them about curses and psychic attack, they're not trained in that, and they're going to just think that you're cuckoo. So like, again, that's common sense, but sometimes people are hoping to be heard and understood. And but they're not trained in that. So you'll just need to keep it to health information with them, unless you're going to a shaman who's also a doctor or something like that. I see a lot of comments coming through. I'll read those in just a moment. So I do want to mention that this topic, illness caused by spiritual warfare, is actually a topic that's very near to my heart, because I have had my own very complicated journey with that. And I'm not going to go into the whole story. I probably need to write a book eventually that has the first section that tells my story of health issues and spiritual warfare, my own story. And then the second half of the book gives information on what people can do about it and that type of thing. But for now, I'll just mention that there is a lot of dark forces interference that runs through different aspects of my family line. I was adopted, so that means there's my biological mother and father's line, and then my adopted mother and father's line. There's a lot of darkness running through all of that. Excuse me. And then in my maternal biological line, there's a lot of that dark forces interference. Specifically in that line, there's a ton of demonic interference, and that has very much impacted health. And there are a lot of people in the family who are very chronically ill, or it's like more and more people are falling ill in the family. There are many, many layers of illness, mostly chronic illness in that family line that has impacted me, as well as belief systems, belief in the holiness of suffering. And so we also need to remember that it's not just these outside spiritual influences, but sometimes there are internal, there are programs that come from our families or our society or even past lives. There are programs, belief systems that we carry with us. For example, in my family line, the like subconscious glorification of suffering. And so that's just a thing. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying it is a thing. And so in my journey, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It's been very multi-layered. Like I've cleared one whole layer of crap and cleared out a health issue. And then there's like 5 more. And so there's been just a ton of stuff to clear. And I'll be more specific. So I talked about the family line, but also there's an energetic program within the family of Lyme disease. So it was passed on to me through birth, but also I've had two different tick bites. One that passed Lyme and Bartonella to me when I was just graduating from high school. That was many decades ago. And then I also had another tick bite in my, I think, early 30s, in which the tick passed on, what's it called? Alpha-gal syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of that. So 3 different tick-borne illnesses. And then Epstein-Barr virus, which came through my family line, but I also caught mono in high school, and then I was never the same after that, like severe exhaustion and infections, and then was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and then later pain disorders, fibromyalgia, and then later the list goes on. Later kidney issues, which I was able to clear. But that was 5 years of literal physical torture. If you've ever had kidney stones before, I had 5 years straight of kidney stones pain. And it was, I was being spiritually tortured. And finally, about 2 years ago, I was able to clear that. And then also hyperadrenergic dysautonomia, which is a complex nervous system disorder. So when I say that there have been many layers, that's what I mean. And even if you have one layer, that's one layer too many. And so we're going to unpack this today. Obviously, I'm working. I'm upright. I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. But there have been a lot of layers for sure. So I don't talk about this a lot because, and so I'm gonna talk about this next little segment next, and then I'll read all your wonderful comments that I see flowing through. I don't talk about this a lot, about all the layers all the layers of crap, layers and layers and layers that I've had to clear. Some people just have more crap that they have to clear in their lifetime. And I don't talk about it that much, mostly because, not you guys, because if you're on my channel, you're a special group of people, but I don't talk about it out in my world, like when I go out and about, because I'm just going to say it. A lot of spiritual seekers are super judgmental about illness. A lot of spiritual seekers are super judgmental. Even if they're really nice and kind people and they're genuine, earnest truth seekers, there is this built-in judgmental thought loop that happens. And it's part of the spiritual culture nowadays. And the spiritual culture nowadays says that if you are high vibe, then illness can't exist. Therefore, if you have an illness, you must be low vibe. Yeah. Which I know isn't true, because I have a beautiful frequency and So do you. And yet, illness can still exist. But there's this belief system that if you just vibrate higher, or if you only speak positive words, I've had spiritual seekers say to me when I was in severe torture level pain, I've had spiritual seekers, friends, say to me, Maya, illness doesn't exist. And the only reason why you're having this experience is because you believe in it. Now, a few people watching this might believe that, but I'm not going to mince words. I'm going to say that that belief is literally delusional. That belief is delusional. Here's my observation. Over my 53 years on the planet, in this incarnation at least, I have seen and I've known many spiritual seekers who believed that, who would actually tell me things like, Maya, you don't need glasses. That's just a belief. You just have to believe that you don't need glasses, and then you won't need them. And maybe on some level that's true. I'm sure there are some people on the planet who that has worked for them. But guess what? The person who kept bugging me that it's all about beliefs, and I'm going to say some things that are hard to say here. The person who told me, who was like harassing me about the glasses, she developed cancer, and 6 months later, she died. Because guess what? Every human being and animal on this planet eventually dies. Even the most perfect spiritual seekers, they die either from an illness, or they die peacefully in their sleep, or they die from an accident at any age. Okay? There was another friend who she told me her family, they don't believe in illness. We don't believe in illness. We don't believe in it. And okay, well, her husband developed a disease and died. So how does that work? So it's this like, there's this belief, even there's a very famous spiritual, I'm not going to say who because it'll take us off topic, but there's a very famous spiritual teacher nowadays who teaches about how you can manifest your reality. And that person, their spouse, husband, developed a disease and died. Now, we don't want to celebrate any suffering of any of these people, but I'm just pointing out that there's this belief that people have, but then there's the reality, and there's a disconnect. So the truth is that anyone can get sick, even if it's not caused by spiritual warfare. Like, every human being and every animal can get sick, even if they're a beautiful, wonderful person who has a perfect spiritual life, perfect frequency, okay? And I know that doesn't go along with what all the popular spiritual teachers are saying, which is probably why my channel is small. But that's why you all are here, because you're ready. You're tired of the teachings that are delusional, that don't make sense. So we're here to talk about the truth today. One aspect of truth is that those who have a really bright light and or a really important mission on the planet, those people tend to be very sensitive. So they have a very sensitized nervous system, a very sensitized body, so that things that are not so good for our physiology affect those people more. Let's take, for example, people who are sensitive to EMFs and actually develop EMF-related sickness. those are people who are more sensitive, which is good to be sensitive. And there are things that are, there are chemicals in our world, there are frequencies in our world, and more that are not good for the human physiology. And all of those people who are sensitive beings, who are really tuned in spiritually, end up being the canary in the coal mine. And yet there are other spiritual seekers saying, just think positive thoughts and the symptoms are not real. And you just need to vibrate higher. Well, some people are actually sick because they are vibrating high, because they can't tolerate some of these, whether it's Wi-Fi, EMFs, or chemicals, or many of the other things that are happening on our planet currently. So they just can't, it's too much for their sensitive system. So let's take a minute and I'll read some comments. And I wanted to get on my soapbox about that. Oh, apologies. There was one more thing I wanted to say on that line of thinking. So I know I was on my soapbox about how a lot of popular spiritual teaching is delusional about the idea of illness. But I want to say one other thing that's super important that maybe will help you understand why people do that. And if you are someone who believes those false ideas, maybe this will help you understand your own psychology. So, as I've mentioned, I have had different levels of health issues over the years, and I've worked on clearing a whole lot of it. But through that journey and interacting with others, I would notice a pattern. And I think a lot of people who've had chronic illness have noticed a similar pattern. And it is a pattern of people being unsupportive and judgmental, as I mentioned before, not just spiritual seekers, but pretty much a lot of people. A lot of people being judgmental, either saying that's not really happening, or you're exaggerating it, or even more so, pointing out that you're doing something wrong. Well, you just need to do XYZ with your diet. Like, I've had people tell me, you need to be on a carnivore diet. I've had people tell me, you need to be on a vegan diet. And they will argue and argue and argue. Or you need to be doing yoga, or you need to be doing breath work, or you need to be juicing, or you need to be like, what things have people told you that you should be doing? Like, right? It's about either mindset or some protocol, a health protocol, or nutrition, or what have you. So there's this underlying belief that you're apparently doing it wrong. So it's this idea of that this person has of, well, the person who's sick, they're not doing it right. I'm doing it right. I have the right diet, or I have the right spiritual practice, or I have the right vibrational frequency, or I'm doing it right, however that is. And this person's doing it wrong. Therefore, I'm safe and I won't get sick. So now we come down to the real point. People are afraid of illness. So they need to create this convoluted story. And they're not doing it on purpose. It's this like subconscious thing that they're doing. They need to create a story that only people who are doing it wrong will get sick, and they're doing it right, therefore they won't get sick. So they're safe. Like, they say, well, I'm safe from getting sick because I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And that other person's so dumb, they're doing it wrong, and that's why they're sick. And they might not have that clarity of thought in the process, but that's really what's going on underneath the psychology of the unsolicited advice. It's what's happening is the person feels uncomfortable because they don't feel safe. Because if they could believe the reality that any human being could get sick, If they were to believe that, that would be too scary. Literally anyone can get sick on this planet. And that's too scary. So you have to judge, or you have to say that they're doing it wrong and that you're doing it right. So I would love to know your thoughts on that. Okay. I'm going to read your wonderful comments, and then I'm going to get into some teaching. We have a lot to talk about today. So give me a second. Because we have a lot to cover today, I'm probably not going to read every comment, but I will read some of them. And I am on my computer now, so I'm going to be looking away from you guys a little bit because it's easier for me to scroll way back on my computer than it is on my phone, which is what I'm recording on. Okay, here we go. Lily says chronic fatigue syndrome from both abuse and spiritual attacks. And that's another important thing. I'm really glad that you mentioned. Sorry that you went through that. But it's important to mention that trauma adds to the recipe of illness. So it's funny because I see all these videos where people are like, oh, well, trauma adds to illness and da-da. Okay, well, what do you do about that? Like, you've been traumatized 15 different ways, but it does add to illness. And there is a big element where the dark forces will establish many layers of trauma in a person's life in order to traumatize the person, but also to encourage illness, because illness, there are a lot of studies that show, like the ACE study, Adverse Childhood Events, shows that children who've experienced trauma later on as adults have a very high chance of developing chronic illness and or chronic pain as an adult. Melinda says, I was diagnosed with scoliosis, fibromyalgia, and CFS, and I found out that I'm dealing with Epstein-Barr virus and mold. I definitely think there's spiritual interference. We have a question. Can addiction be generational? Yes, there are actually addiction genes. Now, I don't specialize in that, but you can look that up online. There are definitely genes that contribute to addiction. And addiction can also be, there can also be dark forces interference contributing. So a lot of times it's a combination. Coral Cross Music says, yes, I've been unwell for 3 years with chronic acid reflux and have also contracted Epstein-Barr virus, which I know has been caused by spiritual warfare. The virus has caused nerve issues and fatigue. Veronica, hi. Hi, everyone. I've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia since 2002. Evelyn says, oh, yes, chronic illness, and I'm now focusing on the energetic and spiritual aspects by doing the psychic solution, psychic protection solution course. Thank you. Veronica says, I try to treat physical, mental, and spiritual symptoms as elements of my overall health picture. That's important. Coral Cross Music says, there's some very dark spiritual health interference in my family too, and some very ingrained conditioning around suffering too. And you guys, just an FYI, I do have a really sensitive body, which helps me with doing psychic work. But here in the desert in Arizona, it's 100 degrees. And so the air conditioning is blowing on me. And sometimes that makes me cough a little bit because it's like hot and cold. So that's all that's happening. Jamie L says, hello, everyone from Rhode Island in the US. Happy to be here. Yay. Veronica says, my mom was diagnosed with EBV, which is Epstein-Barr virus, which is mono, chronic mono. And she had symptoms throughout my adolescence, but I've never thought about whether that might be related to my health now. Interesting. Coral Cross Music says, it's definitely torture. I've been totally tortured by it. One of the most intense things I've ever experienced. Lily says, yes, I can relate to the torture thing too. I'm just going to scroll through and find comments that are on topic. Yay. I'm glad you all are interacting with each other. That's wonderful. Lily says, that's like saying if you broke both legs in a car accident to just vibrate higher, or it doesn't exist. Is this reality bypassing or gaslighting? Exactly. And we would never say something like that to a child that was born without arms or legs, right? So why would we say that in any other instance? So it doesn't make logical sense. But again, people, whether it's spiritual seekers or other people, do this spiritual bypassing thing so that they can feel safe. It helps them to feel safe. So I don't know about you, but that knowing that, understanding that helps. It's still frustrating to run into people who do that, but it does help me to understand and to have empathy and to not be nearly so annoyed when they do it. I'm like, okay, they're just afraid. They're just afraid. They don't get it. And at some point they might have an illness. You know, what I've noticed is the people who are really into those beliefs and then they do develop an illness, they go through a dark night of the soul, and then it usually humbles them quite a bit. And I don't wish that upon anyone, but something that I've noticed. Melinda says, I live with my bipolar husband for 26 years, and I'm certain he has attachments that have affected me. I know that sounds crazy. I don't think it sounds crazy at all. This sounds like a situation where your husband is being spiritually oppressed, and that's affecting his mental health. Now, this is not a medical diagnosis. Remember, I'm speaking purely on spiritual terms. And then those entities are then affecting you. So it's happening in both directions. Oh, my comments just went crazy. Sorry. Give me a second. I have no idea what just happened. Okay, let me find where I was. And I might miss some comments because of that. Yeah, I'll just point out a comment that, you know, I'm going to be more general than what this person said, but there's a long history of people who are considered or were considered very, very holy people who either died a horrible death or they had a terrible illness. And there are a lot of stories. I was raised Catholic. I'm no longer practicing Catholic, but a lot of stories of saints who had, you know, horrible, painful illnesses, and they were considered high vibe. So that's interesting. Veronica says, have you tried yoga? At least once a month, every month since 2002. Yeah. I had someone tell me once, have you tried drinking more water? When I was having like severe kidney issues. And I was like, how stupid do you think I am? Like, do you not think that I've tried thousands of things? Like, of course I've tried drinking more water. It's just like, duh. Veronica says, generally, people just think I'm not trying as hard as they do. I'm just fundamentally lazy. That makes me really, 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 really sad that people are doing that, but you're not. And I relate to it. I relate to that. And I think it's a common, and it makes me cry. It's that judgmental thing that I was talking about. That it's not just that your diet is wrong. It's that, well, you must not be trying hard enough. You're emotionally attached to your illness. There are a lot of books on that and teachings like about how you're attached to your illness and you're not trying hard enough and you're lazy. I had a landlady years ago who did not believe me how sick I was, and she literally said that I was just lazy and didn't want to work as much as she worked, which was insane. That was it. It was like, I think what she said to me was mentally ill. Like, you would have to have zero empathy. But anyway, people say the craziest things. Okay, let me be patient here while I find some more comments. We have from Coral Cross Music. I had a night with Epstein-Barr. I ended up in the hospital with irregular heartbeats. Before I woke up to go to the hospital, I had a sleep paralysis dream. But in the hospital, a man had a Jesus t-shirt on. So that was that sounds like that might have been comforting for you, that part of it. Yeah, Coral says it was a weird, comforting sign. Yeah. And we have a comment from Sundancer about men and women, but I really think that we could just replace that with partner. Like, a partner can keep their partner sick because they're an energy vampire, or they're threatened, or they're feeding off of that person's light. There are so many reasons. And yes, it can be men and women because of our society, but I also truly believe it's all different kinds of partners also. And we're removing the person who just said, "Hail Satan." Thanks for the laughs. Okay. That was hilarious. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to go back into teaching mode. I want to thank you all for sharing so much and sharing from the heart. And also, I just want to say, I want to just put this out there that, and we don't have any comments like this now, but in the replay, like any comments in the future where someone comes on and they say, "What are you all talking about? You need to just do XYZ." I'm going to actually delete those comments because, like I just described, it's not helpful and it's kind of ridiculous. And it's diminishing issues that are very painful. And anyway. So we have a comment, I think back problems can sometimes or partly be caused by attachments that cling to our spine or back. Yeah, that can be a thing. And I know in my case, when I was growing up, I developed scoliosis because of abuse by my father. So it wasn't entities, but it was like literally I had to change myself and I was not allowed to have a spine. I was not allowed to stand up. Without, if I did, my life would be in danger. So there's different reasons for many things. And that brings me to, there are books and resources out there that say things like, if you have a pain in your foot, it means that you're afraid of moving forward, for example. And I hate those lists with a passion because it is oversimplifying things that can be very complex. Like we just had an example of if someone has a spinal curvature, there's like infinite reasons. It could be this, it could be that, it could be any number of things. It could be nutritional deficiencies, which I also had growing up because my mother kept us on a starvation diet. And so anyway, just there are so many reasons. So if you ever see those lists, take that with a grain of salt. You can look at it and maybe it'll give you a few ideas of what's going on with your health, but it's not the be all end all, because where did they get those ideas from? Like, did they just pull it out of their butt? I mean, or did they channel it from an entity? Like, I just hate those lists so much. If you have problems with your eyesight, it means you're afraid of looking at what's in front of you. I mean, come on. That's total oversimplification. Those are the only two from the list that I could think of, but there's all sorts of different health conditions. Coral Cross Music says, yes, I agree. I also get sciatic pain and I can feel energy up and down my spine when I'm under attack. So that brings up another thing. We haven't really talked about pain, but that's included in what we're talking about today too. So not just illnesses, conditions, diseases, but also pain. Pain can be caused or amplified by negative spiritual interference. So before I get into some teaching, go grab a pen and paper if you don't have one already, if you're a note taker type. And I want to tell a quick personal story just because. So at a certain point, and I'm not going to tell the whole story, I'm going to tell this one piece, and I'm not going to give the timing of it. I'm just going to say at a certain point in time when I was in the midst of some extremely painful, horrible health symptoms that lasted a number of months. So there, and I won't even list the symptoms. It was just like torture symptoms. It wasn't the kidney issues. It was something else. Torture symptoms. Okay. And it was ramped up initially because of exposure to a particularly powerful entity that I just didn't see it coming. Okay. Because I've got all my spiritual protection set up and everything. But this was an intentional targeting because of the work that I do in helping people with these spiritual warfare issues. So there was an intentional targeting that came my way. And then the exposure to that entity caused this horrible cascade of torture symptoms that I was diagnosed with a medical issue. So it was recognized medically, but I truly believe it was caused by this entity exposure. And when I was in the climax of those symptoms, when it was so bad, I had a dream one night. And in the dream, and so brace yourself, this is a little gross. In the dream, I had been completely obliterated. I was literally like goo on the floor. Like I had been melted or burned. I was watching a TV show. I don't have a TV, but I was watching it on my computer. I was watching something on my computer, and these people had, it sounds horrible, but they had been exploded with a device. It was a crime show. And when I saw the image on the show, I thought, oh my God, that reminds me of the dream, because it was like, there was like just goo on the floor. And that's what, so in the dream I saw that. So I was an observer, but I had been completely obliterated to where I was just goo on the floor. And the knowing that came to me in that dream as I was watching this scene was that the dark forces not only wanted me out of the picture, they wanted me completely obliterated, like gone. And guess what? I'm so glad that I am stubborn in a really good way, because I made it through those months of torture, and I had to have faith, and I kept staying grounded and present within myself, and I made it through all of those symptoms, and I'm here with you today. So, and I was not obliterated. But for those people who have an important mission, or you have a lot of light, that's one reason why some people are heavily targeted by negative spiritual forces, that those forces are threatened by those kind of people, and would like them gone, or at least to diminish their ability to complete their mission. So it does require tenacity and positive stubbornness to move through these kinds of issues. Thank you for the compliment on the glasses. Okay, I'm going to go into some teaching mode. Causes of illness. Now remember, this is not medical information. This is spiritual information only. Because a lot of times there are medical things going on, but also spiritual elements as well. So, causes of illness. Number 1. Illness is actually a, quote, normal human condition, even though we could have an argument and say, well, why did Creator create us that way? Like, that Creator must be pretty messed up to do that. We could go down that rabbit hole, but that's kind of off topic for today. So suffice it to say that however we were created, this is the construct that we are in, where it is common and normal for human beings to develop illnesses, whether it's catching a cold, normal genetics, or if a person is leading an unhealthy lifestyle. And I'm not getting into that spiritual bypassing that we were talking about before. I am literally saying sometimes if we are living a really high stress lifestyle, or just eating crap, or you're doing whatever that's super unhealthy, sometimes our body, in our body's wisdom, is giving us signals and saying, I need you to stop doing that, and I need you to do it this way instead. So sometimes it is a call to shift our lifestyle. And it's our body is being our friend by communicating to us, and we need to listen. So that's all normal in our construct that we happen to be in. And then number 2 cause of illness would be past life patterns, past life situations, past life traumas. Like if someone died a horrible death with a sword wound through a certain part of their body, let's say their shoulder, they might have shoulder pain in this lifetime. And that doesn't mean that there's an entity attached. Or maybe we were talking about spine earlier. Maybe, there was an injury to the spine in a past life. So if a person has a spinal issue in this lifetime, it may or may not be psychic attack happening now. It could be a past life issue. So once again, there can be so many different things going on. Cause of illness number 3 is ancestral issues. So these can be beliefs and patterns running through your family line, like the belief that suffering is noble. That's a common one. Traumas that run through your family line can end up manifesting later as illnesses. Also, speaking of ancestry, there are normal DNA defects that can happen. That's not normal, but there are DNA defects that can happen. But also there are ways that the DNA can be intentionally interfered with by dark forces. So that's a thing. And then there are curses in our family lines. So we can have curses in our ancestry that could be affecting one or more people in the ancestral line. There's some past occult activity. So if anyone in the past ancestral line was involved in dark occult practices, that can end up manifesting in a variety of ways, whether it's spiritual warfare in general, or illness, or physical illness, or mental illness, addiction, other types of spiritual oppression. There can be, in your ancestral line, family contracts that say everyone is going to have this issue because that's what we think we're supposed to do. It sounds weird, but a lot of families do it, and a lot of times it's unconscious. It's not something they say, well, we want to have this terrible problem, but on some level it's agreed upon. There's also overall dark forces targeting of the bloodline. So let me just take a moment and distinguish. So a curse in your bloodline would mean that there was someone mad at one of your ancestors and they did black magic or some kind of curse toward that family member, and that energy is still flowing through the family line. But then there's something that I call dark forces targeting, which is there's just this overall target on your entire bloodline where the dark occult, dark spiritual forces are, they have your whole family line on the radar and will try to cause problems in any way possible. And it's because there's just something significant about your bloodline. There's a whole other rabbit hole we could go into for that, but there's something significant about your bloodline that has caused all of this targeting. And then in your ancestral line, we're still talking about ancestry now, there can be demonic or other dark forces interference. Oh, and also, I don't have on my list, but I'll add this, involvement in secret societies and taking those kinds of commitments, contracts, making those kinds of contracts in past ancestry that can end up impacting the current family. And then number 4, causes of illness. So we've talked about past life causes, ancestral causes, and now let's talk about just individual, you right here, right now in this lifetime. You right here, right now in this lifetime, if we're just putting ancestry and past lives over to the side, then if a person in the here and now has been dealing with a curse, black magic, someone sending really nasty energy their way, that can actually cause or contribute to an illness or even death. Most, your everyday practitioners are not at the power level to be able to cause death, but I've known a few who did engage in death magic, and they did cause death, but most of the time it's just that they cause suffering and illness. You could have a person, so speaking of causes in your individual life here and now, you could have a person in your life who is an energy vampire. This could be your partner, this could be co-worker, this could be a family member, friend. You could have a person or people in your life who is an energy vampire, who is siphoning your life force energy, and that can cause problems. And eventually, if enough life force energy is siphoned and you don't stop it and you just let it happen, then eventually illness can develop. Okay? And the same would be true if there's an entity attachment, one or more entities attached that are both siphoning energy and also imparting those negative, harmful frequencies into a person's energy field. It's like toxic, noxious fumes in your energy field. Eventually, then the person will usually have some kind of health issue, whether it's pain or developing an actual illness. Let's see what else. I think I listed everything on that one. Now let's talk about number 5, which is the one I'm going to spend the most time on, and this is dark forces targeting. So we've talked about that illness can be part of the normal human condition. We've talked about that past life issues can contribute, ancestral issues can contribute, and then some of the issues of your current lifetime in the here and now. Oh, I forgot to mention, in the individual current lifetime, I know I mentioned entities, but I'll also broaden that and say, if someone is living in a haunted house where there's a lot of paranormal activity, and usually it's very dark paranormal activity, then often the person in the household who is sensitive will often become ill. Whether they're diagnosed with something specific or not, it will affect their health and their well-being physically. So that's another aspect. Okay, number 5, dark forces targeting. This is a big umbrella of the person dealing with the illness in the here and now. So we're not talking about past lives and ancestry anymore right now. The person in the here and now is being targeted by any aspect of dark forces. So this could be the demonic realm, this could be jinn, this could be other types of negative entities, this could be extraterrestrials, non-beneficial extraterrestrials. This can be human dark forces. There are actually people who are run by, who I refer to as dark directed, because there are negative beings running those people. And so I'm going to go through a list here of all of the things related to dark forces targeting. All right, so this dark forces targeting is to keep the person ill and unable to fulfill their mission. Even if their mission isn't like what I'm doing, their mission is to just love their family or to just be a kind person. Like, it doesn't have to be something that's, the person is writing books or out there. Sometimes a person's really important mission seems simple or small, but it's not. Like, those small, missions that are not as visible sometimes are the most important. So, like, just loving your family, loving your loved ones, existing on the planet with your unique frequency. Sometimes that's your mission, or it could be certain work, spiritual work, or other kind of work that you're doing in this lifetime. But the idea is to keep the person ill and unable to fulfill their mission, or unable to fully fulfill their mission. Like, I've thought many times, like, if I had been, over all these years that I was so busy clearing all of the health issues, which has given me unique knowledge, so that's good. But if I hadn't had all of that, I could have been out doing so much more work. So I guess it's a catch-22. Like, I'm glad that I have all of this knowledge, but that's an example of, being kept from the full capacity of what I could have been doing. Dark forces targeting, a little bit more about that. There's a concept called loosh, which is about, the harvesting of life force energy, especially the harvesting of suffering energy. So there are many different spiritual beings that find the energy of suffering to be super yummy, and they will activate suffering in a person and then feed off of that energy. And I don't normally use the word louche, but that is a common term that is used in spiritual teachings where they're talking about this sort of thing. Another aspect of dark forces targeting is directed energy weapons. A lot of people think that this is just like, oh, that's just conspiracy theory. But you even with just a tiny bit of research, you can go online and find out about how directed energy weapons, like it's not even a secret, directed energy weapons have been used by the military to, within warfare situations. So what I'm saying is taking it a step further, and that's where I think maybe people say it's a conspiracy, but I don't believe it's a conspiracy at all. I believe it's completely true, where some of those devices that are used for warfare to direct energy at people in times of war, in combat situations, some of those weapons are actually used by, let's say, the dark cabal or aspects of the human dark forces. Some of those technologies, some of those devices are used against certain people who are not military, certain people to, again, those people have an important mission or they have a lot of light, and so they are attacked by these directed energy weapons. Directed energy weapons are physical, so we've been talking about spiritual, like entities attached to a person, or entities attacking a person, or black magic, death magic, those kinds of things. But then what we're talking about right now with DEW, directed energy weapons, or psychotronic weapons, is that these are physical 3D devices. They are weapons that are used against people, not just in military combat zones, but are used against people. There's a few different ways that they can be used. They can be used to cause pain, physical suffering in the body, to turn on certain symptoms, certain illnesses, and also there are certain devices like the Voice of God technology, where they literally will beam this device, like from across the street or wherever, from some unseen spot. They beam it toward the person, and it's also called voice to skull technology, and it's synthetic telepathy. They send voices into the person's head, and guess what? Then the person is determined to be crazy, so then no one will listen to, like, let's say it's a scientist or a researcher, and then now they have these like voices in their head, and they're deemed to be mentally ill when they're actually not. They were attacked by directed energy weapons. So I truly believe in this, and I believe that I've experienced it a number of times. We don't have time for those stories. And I have students in my program who've had those experiences as well. It does tend to feel different. If you're really tuned in, you can sense that it feels different than the spiritual warfare, the spiritual type of attack, when it's this 3D physical technology. So continuing on the list of dark forces targeting, sometimes people are intentionally placed into a family line with illness. So this is a soul that is particularly hated by the demonic or dark forces. So they are purposely placed in a generational line that has significant illness, whether it's physical, addiction, mental illness, so that this person is going to just have so much trouble surviving. And that's done intentionally. Yes, sometimes we come in through a family line that has illness just because it was random, but other times it's very, very, very intentional. So it will really be up to you to sense which of those might be true for you. So I already talked about how sensitive souls are like, so these sensitive human beings are like the canary in the coal mine, that these things in our world that are considered okay, whether it's chemicals or frequencies or what have you, these things that are considered okay lifestyle, that those who are sensitive will be much more affected by it. And now let's talk about Lyme, Epstein-Barr, those type of pathogens. I truly believe, and it's not just a belief, like there are books out there by, I wish I have a book. I don't remember the author. I think it was called Bitten. Oh my gosh. Hang on just a second, you guys. Okay? I've never done this before, but hang on. I have to take care of something. Okay? Hang on. I'll be right back. I'm coming. Okay. How interesting that there was a disruption right when I'm talking about that. Okay. Lyme and Epstein-Barr. I think the book is called Bitten. And there's this concept in science called gain of function, where they will take something that has naturally existed in nature and they'll mess with it in a laboratory so that they can see what they can do with it. For example, use it in warfare, chemical warfare situations, or maybe I should call it biological warfare situations. So we have ticks that have been messed with to create certain diseases. And here's another thing that I want to say is that Lyme and Epstein-Barr, even Candida, someone has a Candida overgrowth, parasites overgrowth, all of those things, those are, I'm going to use the word pathogens. They are little entities of their own. They are, even if it's a virus, they are little entities. So let's say Candida, for example. Candida is a fungus, and it is a living being. Each little Candida cell is a living being. Candida can actually cross the blood-brain barrier and cause a person to crave sweets because sugar feeds the Candida. And that's so creepy. But the idea that I want to put forth is that these are conscious beings. They are physical entities. So it's like I've seen in people's energy fields when they had like this one person had a big energy worm in one of their chakras, their solar plexus chakra. And then they also had they were diagnosed with, they actually had certain kind of parasites as well. So, you know, what shows up in the physical is also showing up in the spiritual. And so those who have Lyme, Epstein-Barr, I'm not saying that there's an easy solution to this. All of these illness issues, there's not, I have not found like a quick fix. It's been multi-layered, as I've mentioned before. But I think it's important to understand that these are little entities, and you can do the herbals, and you can do the cleanses, and you can do whatever your doctor is having you do. But I think also understanding that these beings have their own consciousness and they want to survive inside your body. I think an important aspect is to focus on reclaiming your sovereignty over your body. You are the one in charge, they aren't. So that's one layer to think about. All right. Chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia sometimes can be caused by trauma, sometimes caused by psychic attack, sometimes caused by black magic, sometimes caused by directed energy weapons, or some or all of the above. And then, of course, genetic predisposition for it as well. Then, and I'm going to read your comments after I get through my list. I'm going to get through the whole list because there's a lot. There's a few more things. Then I want to mention, as we're going through this long list of dark forces targeting, I want to make a mention of, yes, there are many practitioners and doctors who are very good and are there to help and heal. But there are also doctors and practitioners that cause harm. So there's, in past videos, we've talked about secondary psychic attack. Secondary psychic attack is the term that I use for when a person is nudged by dark forces, knowingly or unknowingly, to cause harm to another person. So let's just take, for example, the surgeon who's not paying attention and who makes a mistake in surgery. Everyone's human, but we're talking specifically about a case where they're nudged by a negative spiritual force. The negative, maybe it's an entity, makes the surgeon tired, sleepy all of a sudden. Like, all of these things can happen. And then, of course, there are doctors and practitioners that know that they are working for dark forces, and they're doing it intentionally. And it's to gain power, money, all of those things. Another aspect of dark forces targeting is when help or support is blocked. So the person has health issues, but they reach out to family, and the family says, oh, you're making this up. You're not actually sick. Or you reach out for community. You're like, I need to get this procedure done. I'm trying to raise money. And they're like, everyone has problems. Go away. Right? So there's no help. And whether there's no help or the help is blocked somehow. And then there are also health institutions that are specifically run by dark forces, by dark spiritual forces. And I've actually encountered a few of those. I might do a separate video on that because I want to have time to read your comments before we go, because we've got about 10 minutes left. But there are literally health institutions that are knowingly and intentionally working for dark forces and causing harm in their practices, and it's done secretly, and it's pretty insidious. Maybe I'll do a video on that next year. We'll see. I don't know if I'm ready to talk about that. It goes down a dark hole. So I'll finish my comments by talking about the role of suffering, because the whole idea of illness is to cause suffering for the person being targeted. And number one, the reason is to harvest that energy of suffering, to harvest that loosh. Number two role of suffering is to create negative imprints, like of trauma imprints upon the person. But this is what I noticed with the suffering that I went through. Number three role of suffering, it clears a lot of karma. Now, I'm not saying that we want to ask for suffering, but if you've been through major health suffering, then it's likely that you've actually cleared a whole ton of stuff. And number four role of suffering, again, we don't want to glorify suffering, but this was something that I saw personally, was that a great deal of physical suffering or mental suffering creates internal power. And it actually makes you more powerful than the entities or the powers or the people who are trying to target you. You might not realize it at the time because you feel weak and you feel ill, but all of that suffering, it purifies your soul. So yes, it creates trauma imprints, but it also has a purification aspect and makes you very, very powerful. And that was a huge epiphany that I had shortly after that dream of being a pile of goo. I was like, oh my gosh, they don't want me to know how powerful this is making me. And I want you to really take that as an important message, that if you've gone through a huge amount of suffering, it has made you powerful. Yes, on some level, it makes you feel weaker. It creates all these issues, but it has also made you more powerful. And again, we're not saying that to glorify suffering, but if you're going through that suffering, this is something that's important to know. Okay, so I'm going to read your comments, but I want to add one more thing so I don't leave this out at the end. In my group mentoring program, Spiritual Empowerment Academy, we're actually going to be focusing on illness and spiritual warfare in the next 2 months. And we'll be going through a powerful declaration process to clear all of the layers and layers and layers. And I can't wait to see how that process works with the members. So I wanted to let you know about that. And you can get more information about that program on my website, psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And then also a small thing is this, what I'm wearing right now is a wave watch. It is a frequency device. And right now it is sending energy to my digestion because I ate lunch right before. But I have found this to be really helpful in blocking, especially the directed energy weapon and the death magic, the black magic to impact my health. It creates these frequencies in your energy field that then impedes any of those other negative energies coming in. And of course, even without something like this, you can learn how to set up your own healthy energy boundaries and block a lot of that. So, and we learn how to do that in both of my programs. So let's get into, oh, thank you for the gift. I appreciate that. We had a lot to talk about today. I know I'm not going to be able to get to every comment, and I'm sorry about that. Let's see if I can, I'll read some of them before we go. We've got a few minutes. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about my labs today. That's kind of a different rabbit hole. Quiet Conqueror says, I use a few different frequency devices for healing, and I notice spirits are attracted to these generators, even crystals. Those dark spirits took advantage of me using the device while I slept with it. Yeah, I'm always careful with doing any kind of frequencies when I'm sleeping. because then you're not awake and aware of what's happening. So that's an important message there. Let me see if I can get some of the most important comments. All of the comments are important. Oh, Private says, interesting, since I contracted EBV from a soldier. He was in basic training and everyone in his unit became really ill as well. That gives me chills because the person that I got Lyme from, the person who passed the tick on to me, was a soldier. So that's interesting. Coral says the EBV virus is definitely not normal. I felt COVID was completely man-made too. I felt so weird when I had that. Again, I'm sorry I'm not able to read all of the comments today because I had a lot of teaching. Let's see. Oh, Veronica says, I couldn't walk for 7 years. Now I take lysocene and 5-HTP every day. I'm glad you can walk now. Let me see. I think there was one. Where is this? Coral says, I think it does make you stronger somehow. I'm chatting a lot. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this because of what I've been through. It's nice to have a validating space, so thank you. Yeah, I wish we could go on and on, but one of the things I've noticed is that when it goes past a certain time, then the podcast that I try to post on won't let me post. So that's why we have to cut it off in a couple of minutes here. Yeah, Coral Cross Music. I see your comment about wanting to join the academy, but being ill has made it difficult, and I totally understand. So I want to close with this announcement. I want to just say that there is a special application for anyone who is chronically ill and needs one of my programs, but the illnesses that you're dealing with are inhibiting your ability to move forward. So I want you to send me an email, and there's a contact form at psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And also take some time to look at both programs, but really the next couple of months we're going to be working in the academy specifically with illness and spiritual warfare. So the self-study course is automatically a lower price because it's a self-study course. But anyway, anybody who's watching this, if that resonates with you, if you would like to receive that special application, just reach out. And unfortunately, I'm not able to offer the programs for free because there is a lot of overhead for offering the programs, even on a tight budget. But there's a special way for people who are chronically ill to join. So feel free to reach out. You can send an email through the contact form on psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And again, there's a special application process. So I invite you to consider that. Yeah, so there's a question, how do I protect myself from heavy dark forces? Go to my website, look at all of the resources there, and choose whatever resonates with you. Okay, and there's a lot of videos. There's a video here on the channel of what to do if you're under psychic attack, because that's a little bit off topic of what we're talking about today. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being here. And after we end this live, I invite you to still keep commenting, asking questions on the video replay. And I do check comments and I respond because I really love connecting with all of you. Thank you so much, everybody. And until next time, sending you lots of love.